Alright, we're all set up. We're ready.
Oh,
Alright, we're all set
I'm
up.
a little bit
We're ready.
behind with the times. Just got done with the
Oh.
D&D session and was
I'm
actually
a
about
little
to
bit
wind down for
behind
the
with
night
the
and lay
times,
down.
just got
And
done
with the D&D session and was actually about to wind down for the night and lay down. And thank goodness I was grabbed, because I would have felt really bad and awkward about this. But I got luckily one person joining me, and that would be good old Core. So thank you for joining me in on this.
Good old Corin coming to join you today.
And for the most part, I'm going to be running through all 3 levels on Star Fox. And so far this is not an official category, but 3 categories just sort of smashed together.
Good luck.
It's been considered in the past to potentially be a category, and I've been trying to work on it and add a bit more consistency with it. But when it comes to Star Fox, there's 3 big items for running the game. Boosting constantly, which moves your position forward slightly, fast bosses, and then lag reduction. For the most part, the best way I can describe lag reduction is, have you heard of, for instance, frame roll in Mario? It's essentially that, but it's basically in that... It's in the complicated mess of, oh, we do this because of frame roll, and it's a massive bag of, oh gosh, this is a nightmare to explain. Accurate shots, good positioning, and just knocking out enemies as soon as possible to reduce the lag of the game, because the game lags a lot, is what compiles most of lag reduction, and it just sort of gets absurd the more and more you go into it. So you find we won't be taking a ton of extra shots. We're usually going to be shooting the bare minimum that's required. And in some cases, we will be... Yep. Because especially with the single and double laser, they are polygons that you shoot out. And with those polygons, the game has to load every single one of those. So the end result being, the more you shoot, the more polygons you're adding into it, and when you get to heftier chunks in the run, it just causes issues. But luckily, we're able to go off and manage a lot of that by just knowing where enemies are going to spawn and being able to take shots just so that they're on screen for as little time as possible. Now, we're going to end up coming into the first instance where we are able to utilize a skip for a boss. It's an animation skip. Now normally, when this boss dies, they fly up in the air like that. If I had thrown out a bomb properly and let it explode, instead of it going up in the air and spinning around, it would just drop straight to the ground. It saves roughly an estimated 1.5 to 2 seconds, roughly. So we can expect right now, with this split, we're going to be like 303, 304 easily. Or 305.
Good luck.
Now, one of the biggest items that goes off and causes lag in these runs is going to be instances where your wingmen get chased. Saving them as soon as possible is amazing because if you go off and just let them get chased around, they're going to be on screen for an extended period of time. And they're just going to be intrusive, and they can, for the most part, cost you easily 20 or so seconds within the full run. Now, one of my favorite of the wingman saves is actually...
So, you can play this.
I've been speedrunning this game for over a year at this point. I've gone off and ended up taking all the records before the end of last year, and I've been shaving off more time since.
So you said there was no official record for this specific run, right?
For all Warpless, correct. It's been a theorized run for a good moment of just having a nice run where every single level is involved, but no one's ever taken action to actually have it be a full run finally. But
Just listening to everybody, this is history that's being made right here today.
But for the purposes of marathons such as this, I've really wanted to go off and do runs like the full level 3 Warpless because there's a wide variety of lag reduction strats because, funny enough, while we save our wingmen as soon as possible in this run, in level 2, that's actually not the case. We let them all get shot out of the sky and we go about our business. And I'll explain the reasoning for that when we get around to it.
Good luck.
As I mentioned before with lasers, every time you shoot, you're introducing more polygons into the run. However, funny enough, with the max lasers which we just now got, they are not polygons, but they are sprites, which actually loads them a bit quicker, so it's going to cause less lag for the total run. Which is honestly really fortunate because having something that does a lot of damage and doesn't cause too much lag for the game is kinda really nice for speedrunning. But in that case, it puts the scenario of the double laser being the worst thing for the run just is even more of a factor if you want to get rid of it ASAP. Now, with our constant boosting, it can put us in some scenarios which is kind of sketchy. Like, for instance, right there, you're able to weave through ever so slightly, but most of the time, you're bound to get yourself hit just because you're pushing your forward position way too much. Now, the thing is, you're still going to be saving time despite that, but you're likely going to lose your shield, you're likely going to end up taking damage, which can be a huge issue. Especially if you end up using the safe, quote-unquote safe strategy for the boss coming up. In order to go off and defeat the boss coming up, there are 3 nodes that you have to destroy, and they're cycling around the entire time. In order to go off and beat the boss quickly, you want to kill those nodes as soon as possible, so if you miss a shot, you have to wait for it to go all the way back around in order to continue the fight. The safe strategy is, instead of taking shots at each of the nodes, you end up just crashing the body of your ship into them, so that you can't possibly miss a single shot. And obviously, when you crash a ship into basically a giant ship, as you can imagine, you take a lot of damage, and you're very likely to die if you're not full health.
Surprised how well you can maneuver in this game. Because when I was a kid, I could not fight this space at all.
And now we're going to move on to arguably my least favorite level in terms of the level 1 run. In terms of levels and segments where I lose time normally, this one's probably the most volatile coming up. Just because of the fact that there is a lot going on and the boss is kind of awkward.
Hello? Hello?
So we're just going to push this top right corner here. We're going to ignore all the obstacles. We're going to hope that this enemy doesn't sneak a shot past them. And then we're going to slip behind the rock. And we're going to come up on our first of very annoying enemies here in just a second, the helicopters. When the helicopters first come into view, you aren't able to do anything about them. They actually aren't able to be hit until they are essentially completely horizontal in perspective to you, so you have to let them fly all the way out before you can do anything. And if you miss them in that moment, they will fly even higher up into the skies so that you cannot hit them, and then proceed to crash into you. Alright, now we're on to probably my least favorite boss for this segment, because in terms of consistency, he's awkward. You have to knock 3 of his 5 legs, or 6 legs, in order to make him fall down. The problem is, the hitboxes are massive, so massive that they can overlap each other, even in these instances, because then they go off, you aren't able to do damage to legs that are knocked, and they're blocking the ones that you need to actually be hitting. Oh.
Nice.
And now we're closing in on the final level of level 1. But the problem is, they decided, you know what, we're going to split this into 3 different areas. Outer space, the surface of the planet, and then, hey, let's add a tunnel sequence to the final boss. So when it comes to Venom Orbit, you're going to have to deal with a lot of enemies. There's no way to really avoid them. They love to hang out on your screen for an extended period of time. And if they don't like to stay on the screen for an extended period of time, they're trying to crash into you. So this level ends up being put to a situation of you just have to kill just about everything. A good run for this level, you are basically always going to have a 100% score every time you do it. Whew. Now what's really nice, if you miss the phase skip on that boss, is when he splits into 3 positions, he is always going to be in that bottom right position every single time, no matter what. And right out the gate, as we're here on surface, we're just going to push the left side of this screen. It's a really nice place to be. We go slightly to the middle to shoot that enemy. We boost up in the left corner to get a nice crash save, and then we go ahead and knock out 2 more enemies. The big lag point for Venom Surface is something I generally refer to as the French fries. They are giant, lovely pillars that love to just like be in your way and follow you the entire time. The best way to go off and deal with them ends up being just flying one side of the screen to the other repeatedly, and they are going to come back multiple times throughout this stage, which ends up being really awkward. And now we gotta deal with these french fries. Okay. You could go ahead and shoot at them, but they end up... They're damage sponges. They have probably more health than every single one of the Lammolas combined. And when I say every single one of the Lammolas, I mean all 6 of them, when it comes to Link to the Past. And on top of it, when you do manage to actually go off and kill them, you have to deal with a lot of explosion particles on top of it. So it's just best to ignore them at all points in time. Ooh. And now we got the Fantron 2 fight. When it comes to this fight, all you can do, lane shots, barrel roll, throw out bombs, and just kill him before he's able to split into 3 portions. And sadly, he does not die instantly. He will always go for this jumping animation, jump back. He'll get lined up with you, so you can push him to the left side of the screen, then go right, and he just dies out of the way, so you don't have to worry about all those explosion particles and stuff flying at you. And now we got the final section of level 1, where we get to fly through this lovely tunnel, and then fight Andross, with potentially, if we are fortunate enough, we can get to 1 cycle, which means that you can avoid him doing the tile suck and spit out attack that he ends up doing, which cost you, for the better part, about 15 seconds. When it comes to most runs, you won't go off and see people get this, just because it is so tight on timing that it's a nightmare to do. And also because he likes to, when he shoots those tiles out of his eyes, every single one of those can block your shots. Even if you hit them and split them in 2, it becomes an even bigger issue. But there's nothing you can do about that. They are always going to be in your way in some aspect. You just got to deal with it.
Is this fight the same depending on what path you take, or does the fight change?
The fight is, for the most part, the same. With level 2 and 3, he has increased health, and in level 3, he has an additional phase if you don't manage to kill the core in 1 cycle. So it's a very similar fight, but it does get tougher along the way. And for the most part, if this category did all come together and was on the board, essentially we would be waiting for the score percentages to fall up, and as soon as that's done, you're able to reset and move on to the next level. So at this point, we're just waiting for these score percentages to show up as a nice little confirmation that this was not a segmented run. And then we can go ahead, reset, because there's no other way to actually deal with that For some reason, when they coded this game, even if you get to the end, there's no way to get past it other than a hard reset, even though in the bottom right corner here where it says score, there's no way for it to actually save the score.
Good luck.
Ooh, and now we get to move on to level 2. It's very similar to level 1 Corneria, except for the fact that the stage itself is different, but the boss is 100% the same. There is no difference between the level 1 Corneria boss and the level 2. But for this category, we go ahead and grab lasers on Corneria, and we let our wingmen just get knocked out. So, I said before that it costs you time with letting your wingman get chased around, which is still entirely true. It's terrible to deal with. However, in this rare instance, there is enough time save for letting them all be out of the way later on that it ends up being worthwhile. Plus, it also manipulates the RNG of one boss. Once we get to that boss, I'll go into further detail as to how that all works. But due to the fact of RNG manipulation and how it is able to save you time elsewhere, it ends up actually being worthwhile to do, which is kind of counterintuitive with what most of the lag reduction rules generally are. And luckily, we ended up having a wingman fall on the first stage, which is honestly really lucky, as normally you're only going to get 2 wingmen to half health at this point. You basically need to get a 33% chance roll twice in order for it to actually be the same wingman, so having that at the start of a run is really fortunate in our case. And for the sake of it being an example, last time we did not get the animation skips, so I'm going to try to make absolute certain that we get it this time around. So that you can see, instead of the ship flying way up into the sky and spinning around, it will just drop straight to the ground. Or I could throw out the bomb light and let it fizzle out. But altogether, that's perfectly fine. We did miss a bomb earlier in the stage, so us not using the bomb there, although it's a shame we don't get that 1.5 to 2 second time save, the fact that we are back on the bomb count is not terrible.
Good luck.
And we're going to continue to let our wingmen go ahead and get chased. There is a safe position for us to be in with this, and there is a potentially more optimal but could be worse scenario. The safe scenario is if Peppy gets chased again, we'll have one wingman be at 3/4 of his health by the end of this stage. So we'll only have one wingman left. In the better scenario, we have one wingman with 2 HP and one wingman at 1/4 of its health. Ooh. Now, for this level, we're actually going to fight... Oop. I did not mean to save Peppy there. That's going to cost us a little bit here in a moment. But for this level, we are going to fight another familiar boss. We're going to end up fighting the Rock Crusher again. With the Rock Crusher in this case, unlike the Corneria boss, it is definitely different in only one way. Last time we were able to use a bomb at the very start while it was in its beginning position, and it was able to work. In this scenario, you could do that, but it's only vulnerable for 1 frame. So it ends up actually being a frame-perfect bomb if you are to get it. In this scenario, given with a little bit of rust, we're going to play this a bit more safe and let it turn around. So instead of it being 2 cycles, we're going to go ahead and let it be the slightly slower 3. Oh. Alright, so given that we accidentally saved Peppy, especially on the attack that should have taken 2 health, our best scenario here, honestly, is for Peppy to get chased at the very beginning to get them out of the way sooner, and having Falco for the next 2 chases.
Good luck.
If Falco gets chased first, that's sort of unfortunate, but that's, for the most part, my bad for accidentally saving the hare. But we didn't get punished for our terrible mistake, so it's fine. And by terrible mistake, I mean letting our compatriot get blown up in the sky. You know, sometimes you just kinda have to question what you're doing while speedrunning games, but I digress. So Falco's going to get chased in the middle here, and we're going to have, yet again, 2 helicopters to deal with. One's going to be on the opposite side, so we just have to sort of wait for the second helicopter to fly in our way. As to avoid saving Falco in that instance. There's one more chase scenario that we're able to wait for here, so that Falco will be gone by the end of the stage. It should be coming up here in just a second. And with that one, we're going to have to kill the enemy that was chasing him, as it will get right in our face and make sure we know that, hey, you should have saved your buddy, and also, or just let him get taken out sooner. Oh, there's our lovely friend just right in our face, crashing, burning. Okay, we're good. And one thing that I absolutely love about this level, at least, is the fact that it still has the easiest boss in the entire game. I always consider Professor Hanger a little bit of a pushover, as he usually dies before he can really get any opportunity to do much. What's going to generally cost you time here is if you get a bad pattern on these little fish jumping up into the sky and jumping across the screen, like we're having right now. But he'll send out one set of fish and you'll be able to knock him out by that time. Also, I would like to point out to everyone, at the top of your screen you see that lovely gray bar there. It's completely straight, but if you look on the ground, it's waving back and forth constantly. I have no idea why that's the case. I don't know if the surface of this planet is wavy like that, but the structure above us definitely isn't. So, the reason that we let our wingmen die is mainly because of this level right here. Your wingmen love to chase stuff all over this level, and having to deal with that and be able to manage it is kind of a nightmare. By letting all your wingmen get knocked out, you don't have to worry about any of it. The level ends up being really tame. And then on top of it, the boss of this level is less aggressive. In most cases, the Plasma Hydra, the boss here, is referred to as the Gatekeeper. It will kill the vast majority of your runs due to bad RNG or just flat out knocking you out. I've had way too many instances where this has been the case, and eventually I ended up finding out that by letting your wingmen all get knocked out, it changes some sort of RNG-based factor in the game, so that he does not shoot out of his arms all that often. Now, when he shoots out of his arms, you have to shoot the ends of his hands to do damage to move into the second phase of the fight. But if you shoot one of his hands and the shot is trailing across to do damage to him, if he shoots out that arm, it just explodes and puts that side into an invulnerable state, so you can't do anything and you're just going to lose time. But in this case, it won't be so bad, given the fact, and right there as you saw, his hand ended up shooting off. It won't be so bad because he won't be shooting near as often, so we can go ahead and knock it out sooner. And I went for the 50-50 with the left side, but in that moment, we saw the shots trailing up the arm. If we had taken any shots there, that would have been kind of bad for us and just a waste of time. So just giving up, moving over to the other arm was the best that we could really hope for. And I just realized I was comparing against my summer best for this.
Good luck.
Ooh, alright. Orbit 2. Very similar to Orbit 1 in the fact that it loves to go off and just throw a ton of stuff in your face, but they do it in a little bit more tricky fashion of they love to have the enemies fly in very sporadic patterns in large groups. And in some instances, they got a ton of enemies that love to split into more objects if you don't do anything about them. Coming up here, we're going to have a lovely group of 5 enemies right here. By using a bomb at this point and boosting forward, if we do it a little bit later, we can also kill those 3 enemies that just ended up popping up. So it's 1 bomb for 8 enemies, which is really nice, and the 3 that ended up coming up will never be on your screen if you time it properly. And that little enemy on the right side of the screen coming across is a little bit of a troll. It holds something referred to as an overshield, which is a nice blue bar for extra health. But the thing is, with his general flight path, he usually ends up dying so far off the screen that it is impossible for you to do anything about it. And it just goes off and sits there in your view as you watch it just float off into space, and then it just gets referred to as the impossible bomb. Now for this boss, when you kill half of it, the other half just says, you know what? I want to go home. I don't want to be a part of this fight anymore. And the fight just decides to end. So by focusing all your shots on one half, you can cut down plenty of time on this fight. Now, for this level, it's generally optimal to hang out on the left side of the screen the entire time, as most enemies are going to be flying in from the left side, so you're just in position at all points in time to knock them out as soon as possible. In the later portion of this level, you're going to find a couple motorcycles that end up spawning. By hanging on the left side there, you're able to knock them out before they ever actually reach the map. And here comes the little motorcycles. Go ahead, throw out shots on the left side. You don't have to worry about them. Now, something a little bit unique here is you actually have to kill a couple enemies in order for the boss to spawn. If you let those 2 enemies that I just killed hang out for a bit, this boss will not pop up ever until they are dealt with. now we get to close in on the second portion of this. The tunnel sequence for here is surprisingly easier, in my opinion, than any of the other levels. In this level, it's actually kind of shorter, if I recall correctly. Just due to the fact that most of the obstacles are in a position where you're able to avoid them a little bit easier, and you have to move side to side a lot less. Now we deal with this fight again. The difference between level 1 and this one is just the fact of more health. Due to this increased health, the level 1 face fight, currently as it stands, is not possible. It has not been done on the task variation, with knowing the fact that single shots are able to be inputted on every single frame, and the core has a little bit more health. So much so that you actually need to use a bomb in order to knock it out. Otherwise, you're just going to have to fight the face again, and that's going to likely end up costing you for the better part of half a minute. And just like last time, we'll wait for the score to show up, and then we can move on to the last level. Now, the best way that I can describe each level, level 1 is the one most enjoyed by the majority that pick up speedrunning the game. It's fairly simple, it's got a lower skill floor, but it still has a reasonable skill ceiling. There's plenty of fast bosses and nice little lag reduction strats that you can mess with. Level 2 tends to be the favorite of most top runners, just due to the fact that the skill ceiling gets raised a bit more, but that skill floor still isn't too bad. However, level 3, which we are now coming across, is in that zone of it can be really unfair, so most people just avoid running it altogether. Especially in the past week, I have been grinding this category and levels specifically, just to shave off more and more time. As of yesterday, we ended up getting the first sub 28 run. And that is due to a mixture of optimizing lag reduction strats and going off and incorporating one cycles and quick kills to bosses that was previously only done by the tanks. Also, a big difference is, hey, in this one, Cornelius' sky is red. Reason being, I don't know. I don't think it ever actually gets explained.
Now, are you going to let any of the fighters go down in this run?
In this category, no. In fact, that is only a strategy for level 2 Warpless. It is not used in level 2 Warps, it's not used in level 2 Warpless 100%, it's only in that one category of the 13. So in this case, we're going to be saving people as soon as possible. There are some pretty awkward crash saves that you can go off and do, putting your ship in the way of the flight path of enemies, just to save them as soon as possible. For instance, right there. If you boost too late, that enemy is going to pass right in front of you. If you boost too early, it will pass behind you. So finding a good boost pattern ends up being really important if you want to get that one, because it ends up just getting in the way of buildings and it's a nightmare to try and track. And one of the lovely things about lag reduction is, with pushing stuff off screen, you're going to end up pushing a lot of sides at times, and some of them are a bit more questionable. This is one of the funnier ones, as you can go past the side of these buildings and just ignore all the obstacles in the least laggy spot, in the most safe spot possible. And in this case, we get to fight a new boss finally for Corneria. The Destructor. This was one of the first bosses where the task 1 cycle ended up being added to the run. The safe way to set it up is you go ahead, you knock out that first node, and that gives you a rough idea of when you want to use the first of 2 bombs. The 2 bombs end up helping you kill off the top portions. They only come down 1 at a time, and with 2 bombs, it knocks out the nodes underneath. If you go off and poorly time it, that top portion will go straight back down and spawn another one of those bottom nodes, refilling its health bar entirely. So going off and getting those 2 bomb timings down is really important for that. We might have just gotten the lovely position here. Oh. So sometimes with positioning of enemies, such as the triangle that we just saw there, they can be positioned in such a funny way that they end up crashing into enemies that spawn on screen, so that you don't have to deal with them at all. And I'm just going to buckle down and focus here, as we've taken a little bit more damage than I would really hope for at this point, and crashing into one of these lovely smiling asteroids would have likely gone off and killed us. But now that we've come up to this boss, there's really not much to worry about, as this boss ends up being relatively consistent overall with being able to knock it out. Now usually it'll go off and try to grab you, but by pushing the sides, it ends up just flat out despawning the tractor beam, so that you never have to worry about it. Whew. And depending on our health, our bombs, and how we're feeling, I might be going for the new task kill that got implemented into this specific level for the boss. It is very dangerous to go for, and depending on the circumstances, it could kill a run, or it could just be the safest option, depending. And honestly, given our 5 bomb count right now, and the fact that we're still full health, this is looking really good. The goal coming up here is to be able to hang on to a shield that we should be getting soon. These birds that you see right now have the exact same pathing and habits as the helicopters seen in previous levels. They don't become vulnerable until a bit later, but if you save your wingman at the right time like we just did, the pattern of shots from your wingman can go off and knock every single one of them, so you don't have to take a single shot. And honestly, it's looking really good shield health-wise. One more little tick of damage and we lose it. But if this plays out right, the next tick of damage will be during the boss kill. And if we do manage to get the bomb setting this up, it's going to be a blink and you miss it moment with this boss, as the quick kill for this is very aggressive. We're going to try to set ourselves up to throw a bomb right off a boost at an angle that will throw the bomb up and over the boss, and the explosion radius will knock both the heads back so that he is in a vulnerable state like he is right now, and then we boost into his body, chunking him for all of his health. And obviously, sitting in a boss's entire body, if you don't have that overshield, is going to cause you a lot of damage and likely kill a run, but if you have that shield, it is extremely safe to go for.
Good luck.
Now, something we are going for here in a second is going to be a wing just to reset our health, as we have taken a couple extra shots than I really feel comfortable with. And by doing that, that's going to reset both of our wing health to 5 hits apiece. If we take 5 hits to a single wing without resetting it, the wing itself is just going to break, and we are going to be set to the lowest laser in terms of damage. And in the case of level 3, a lot of bosses are going to require the max laser, so you need to have it at all points in time. If you lose it, it's very likely that your run is on the verge of dying off, especially if you lose it on Venom Surface. And we're just going to push the right side of the screen. We're going to ignore every single obstacle that this game throws our way, just because sometimes you want to ignore stuff like that. Now we're going to come up on a variation of a boss that we've already seen. We're going to be finding the atomic base again. But in this case, if you hit one of the nodes twice, or when you hit the nodes, they don't disappear like they do in level 1. Instead, they stick around. But if you hit it again, it reactivates. If you hit it when you've already knocked all 3 out, well, then you end up in a position where the boss is invulnerable again, and you have to knock the nodes once again. But we're just going to use the strategy of running into the nodes so we get the one hit, we get out of the way, we dip in, we do the damage, we deal with the massive cutscene where there's explosion particles everywhere. And with this, we get to go to the what looks to be a cookie on the screen right now, but it's Macbeth, the lava planet, and by far the laggiest of every single level in the game. You will see right out the gate, there are giant polygon figures on both sides, and the game just chugs a lot. This can be an issue for multiple reasons. One, the obvious reason, the game's lagging a lot, it's going to be running slower, but also because of it running slower, it is more likely to go off and eat your inputs. You'll find that I am more likely to take extra shots on this level than most any others, just due to the fact of I don't trust my shots to come out properly most of the time. In fact, there's actually going to be several moments here where I can go for a boost and it just won't come out, so my pattern needed for setting up for the crash kill here in a bit is going to be a lot tougher. And we're just going to go ahead and go for this lovely safety shield. It shouldn't be necessary, but just for the sake of what's about to happen, it's better safe than sorry, because we kind of want to finish this run. After this set of stalagmites and stalactites, which for some reason break off and are rocket powering to you, you get these two enemies, and you get the lovely crash save, which sadly we don't have the boost for because our rhythm is already off pace. And at this point, we lose the shield because even if you're able to barrel roll off shots, the projectiles that these enemies throw out are still going to do damage to the shield, even if they wouldn't do damage to you. And this boss, known as the Spinning Core, or as I like to refer to as the Circus Tent, loves to get in your face at all points in time. It likes to do a lovely juggling act with some orbs, and it's just... It's a joyous time to go to the circus, except, you know what, this seems to be clowns in space, and we don't want to deal with that, so we just burn down the circus tent and move on. But if we get a scenario where one of those orbs crashes into us, for the better part, depending on what part of the ship it hits, it can do easily a third of your health just on one tick of damage, which is why we wanted to try and save the shield there. But luckily we didn't need it. Now we're back to Venom Orbit, which loves to throw enemies in our face. We got enemies that love to take weird paths. We got enemies that love to crash into us. Same game plan though, we just get rid of everything. Now in this case, this enemy that we see right here, this X-looking enemy, is lined up with a missile that loves to be invisible. If you don't shoot it, it will split into 5 more missiles and just adds a bit more lag. But because of the position of that enemy, we're able to get it every single time so long as you're able to stay in that spot. We're just going to go ahead and use one of our bombs, as we have one extra bomb at the time, just to trade in for another one, just because that's a safe point where you're able to use it. While there's technically other better places we could have used it, that was just the safe option for the sake of this run. Now, speaking of doing things safe for this run, this is going to be an instance where this strat is never safe. When it comes to level 2, you have the Plasma Hydra that kills a lot of runs. With level 1, it might be Fantron that kills a few runs for you. In this case, Level 3, you get it near the end of the run. It's this lovely boss who has horrendous hitboxes. There's 6 of them, and you got to knock all 6 in order for it to be out of the way. And the fight is very long. But if we are able to place 3 bombs and crash our ship into the boss properly, we will be able to go ahead and one-cycle it, but sadly, there are 2 nodes still on the left side that we did not hit. Alright, we got one of them there. We're going to go for the crash here, hoping to get it, but not the case. So we gotta find a good point to go ahead and use our extra bomb there to knock it out, just to move on with the level. Because of this, we are going to have to grab at least 1 of 2 bombs in the upcoming stage. If we don't, one-cycling the final boss is going to be impossible, and having an extra bomb for the boss on the next stage here is extremely helpful for just getting rid of it as soon as possible. If we had killed this boss with 3 bombs, we would have had the 2 bombs required for this. That's sadly not the case. Luckily, this level does have some backups that you can go ahead and grab, so it shouldn't be too much of a worry. But depending on how this level goes, we might actually just be going for 1 of them. And honestly, depending on this, I might also be going for the wing upgrade to reset our health, which I don't normally go for in this case, but we've taken a few more hits than I care for. And we are not going for this crash save like we normally would. We're just going for some safe shots, just because we want to hang on to this shield a moment longer.
The essential
Alright,
workers.
and with that, our
People
wing
our
health
country
is set
looks-
to full again. Now we're going to have to fly through all these arches to make sure that we get the 2 bombs that we're trying to look out for. If we had just taken that hit there and I didn't barrel roll it off, I can guarantee you we would have definitely crashed and burned. So I am very glad that the lag didn't eat our input enough to the point that we mistimed that. So we get to see this boss again, but in this scenario, he has a new trick up his sleeve. He says, "Surprise, I'm a transformer, and also now I have a unique projectile that is impossible to barrel roll off, takes up a good chunk of the screen, and does a lot of damage." And if you take too long in the first phase of this fight, he'll decide to go off and say, I don't like how this is going, and proceed to spin around like crazy and shoot out a lot of those shots, but we were able to avoid that, so it's fine. And now we can finally move into the very last fight, very last stage, the last stretch of level 3 to close out this full all Warpless run. Luckily, we don't have to do anything position-wise here at the start. We'll be able to get health. We'll get our second bomb that's required to be able to one-cycle the core if we time it properly. We'll be able to crash into so many obstacles and put ourselves in a terrible position for this fight, as now we have less than half health. So we can't afford any mistakes on this fight at this point. There's a good chance that I'm going to be playing it a little bit more safe in some instances with bouncing between eyes. Just in case I feel like we might crash and burn, as they can do a good chunk of health. With where our health is at this very moment, there is a good chance that we might die in one hit if we take a bad hit. It's ideal to go off and deal with this face portion of the fight in 2 cycles. We're far enough ahead and safe on time, though, that we can go ahead and afford a little bit of a time loss there. And sadly, we don't get the one cycle here, so we get to see what's unique about this boss fight. He now spits out tiles like crazy and constantly while shooting projectiles that love to track you, which is terrible. And I tried to go for the barrel roll, but lag due to so many projectiles being spit out ended up costing us so that we weren't able to barrel roll off the shot, and we end up dying. But luckily, we should be able to still finish this in the minute 20, as I estimated, despite that, as long as I can clean this up. We won't be able to one-cycle the core at all, period, at this point. That's not feasible. So we're going to have to go off and brute force the later portion of this fight with the weaker lasers. Now, given we have more health, I'm going to be a bit more aggressive with the face portion of this fight, and get us to that point that we deal with the core just a bit sooner. And with that, that's all 3 levels. of Star Fox knocked out for you.
Grass screen, right?
Thank you for having me, by the way, and thank you very much for the message. If I had remembered, I would have gone off and had more prep to set this up.
Very good. Happy to be here for to hang out with you for a bit.
It's much appreciated. And what do we have up next for Link to the Cure?
We have Beefin up with Hades' 3 weapons, so let you wrap it up and then I'll swap over.
Alright. Well, again, thanks for having me. I go off and run this game fairly regularly, so long as my wrist does allow it, because, hey, I don't want to give myself carpal tunnel with some of these inputs. You can follow me here on Twitch at snake_madness. I'm going to be looking into doing some other games as well in the near future, so be on the lookout for that. But that being said, I hope you enjoy what's coming up next. I love Hades. Hades is a great game, and the speedruns for it is insane. So thanks again for having me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the marathon.